Thank you all so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So again, I want to invite everyone, just a few housekeeping rules while we're going through the next hour and a half. Please feel comfortable coming on camera if you'd like. We are going to interact throughout the hour and a half that we have together. And so don't feel any pressure. We can all relax and just be ourselves this morning on Friday. So I want everybody to feel comfortable if they want to come on camera doing that. We are going to do a few breakouts over the next 90 minutes, just where you're going to be thinking about how to take action on the things that I share today. And as well, I'm going to be sharing a slide deck with everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that up while we're talking about it. But essentially, today we're going to talk about a number of different things. And I don't want you to feel like you are supposed to remember every single thing that I say, write it all down, keep it all organized. I will be sending Western Women's Business Center a copy of my slides, and you'll be able to dig into more deeply the things that I share today. So most of you who've been in my classes before know that I typically kind of let everybody walk away with an ebook of information based on what I shared. And so this will be a PDF download. I'll send it to everyone, like I said, to the Western Women's Business Center, and they should be able to share it with everyone as well. So what I want you to really think about today is really the main topic, right? Which is innovation and resilience and what that kind of means to you. And one of the reasons I've been so excited to talk about this with different clients and students is, I was in business when 2008 happened and the economy just sort of crashed out. As a matter of fact, it was my birthday weekend and I was away camping for my birthday. And as I drove back that Tuesday, I listened to the news on the radio in my car and I was like, oh my God, I went to the woods and I came back to a completely different situation than when I left. And so that was a very powerful experience for me as an entrepreneur. And also as somebody who was consulting and working with other businesses on their marketing and communications, right? Because we literally had to rethink everything we were doing. We had to sort of stop and say, okay, what is happening in the world and how are we going to adapt to it? And I feel like over the last year, we really had that same experience, right? Except it's now sort of continuing. There's this continuing adaptation that we're being, I would call, invited by the universe to do, right? Where I know for myself, I've been struggling as an entrepreneur because there's days where I look at people and I'm like, if somebody had told me after 17 years I have to go back into startup mode, I would have been like, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. I would like to stay in my stable, secure zone. But the truth is, we've entered this new space where as an entrepreneur, I've had to go back and embrace that I can't necessarily predict everything that's going to happen. Right now, I feel like with both the businesses that I run, I'm at about a 3 or 4 month kind of future projection, right? I don't feel comfortable, although I'm still thinking about the long-term future. I don't feel comfortable projecting everything as if it's 100% known to me what the results are going to be. So what I want to share today is really something I think I've learned over the years of being in business, and specifically to talk about how it impacts marketing, right? So I have this perspective as a business owner, but as someone whose main job is working in marketing, I feel like there's a sort of mindset that we can develop around these things that allows us to take periods of just stress and change and crisis and questioning and really utilize them to empower ourselves. And not just to empower ourselves as business owners or brands and to sell more of our products and services, but also to sort of empower ourselves through our relationships with people and kind of share that empowerment, right? So to me, it's kind of a piece where we all step forward creatively together in order to, as a community, make it through something that sort of locally, nationally, internationally is impacting everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Sarah Benoit. I'm the co-founder and lead instructor of the JV Media Institute, and I'm also president of Creative Original Inc. And so my main jobs are focused around building websites, consulting around websites, helping people strategize around their websites and how they're going to market and promote using them, and also just teaching a variety of digital marketing topics. And so that's why over the last 13, 14 months, I've had a lot of conversations about how we're going to manage the changes that are going on. So I want to start just by setting some clarity around what do we mean when we're talking about innovation and resiliency. And it might seem obvious to just read the basic definitions, but I like us to really get centered in what these things mean, because when we innovate, it means that we're making changes to something that's established, that already exists, and we're going to introduce new methods, ideas, products, ways of thinking, perspectives, right? So innovation, a lot of times I think, gets pushed into a space where you have to be creating something completely new from scratch, and now you're innovating. But that's not really how innovation works, right? It means taking what we already have and not being afraid to make the shifts that need to be made, right? Not being afraid to introduce a completely new approach to something that's already there. And so I think there's real strength in that, because it's not about throwing out everything that we've done before. It's about turning what we've done before into something new. And when we talk about resiliency, I think, again, we often have some sort of preconceived notions about what this means. But at its core, all it is that you're able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult situations. Or even more, I like the part of the definition where they say you're able to recoil or spring back into shape after bending, stretching, or being compressed. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like 2020, I was bent and stretched and compressed. Like, this was a real experience that was very literal, I feel, for me personally. And so being resilient, again, isn't about resisting the bending and the stretching, right? It isn't about fighting against the compression. It's about knowing that you have the ability to spring back into shape afterwards. It's about knowing that you're flexible. It's about knowing that you're malleable in some ways, and that your success and your overall accomplishment of your goals is also malleable, is also flexible. So this is why these two words became, it's funny, I remember being in a class with some other folks where somebody used the word pivot, and everyone's face just was like, ugh, I don't want to hear that word again, right? I don't want to hear the word pivot one more time. And so I was like, all right, cool. We need some new words for figuring out what we're going to be doing as we go forward. And to me, innovating and building resilience became really a core thing that made me feel good. Because for me, like I said, it's not about turning into something that I'm not. It's not about asking myself to just become a completely different person so that I can handle things. It's not about taking my business in a direction that's just completely out of line with what I've been doing. It's actually about getting centered more in myself, getting centered more in the brand, and really being innovative and resilient, building off of everything that I've accomplished, using everything I've done in the past to actually come up with fresh ideas and fresh approaches. And if you're doing it right, in my opinion, fresh passion and rejuvenation of your motivation, right? So I think a lot of us also faced a kind of exhaustion last year with a lot of different things. And to me, innovation and resiliency became part of my process for figuring out how to bring that energy back into the business, right? Because there were days, like I said, I felt like I was in startup mode. And I was like, I don't know, I might be better at startup mode in my 40s than I was in my 20s, but I'm also like over it more quickly in my 40s than I was in my 20s, right? So now that I know a little bit more, I'm a little bit wiser, I know how I want to spend my energy. There were points where I really had to look at myself and say, okay, this is getting, a little draining, trying to do all these things. So how am I going to recenter myself, ground myself again, and refuel myself at the end of the day, right? So that's why I want to encourage you, even if innovate and resiliency aren't necessarily your words, figure out what your words are to really describe what are those things that you need to refuel. Because, again, bouncing back with things, taking a completely new approach, letting yourself um, evaluate all your previous beliefs and giving yourself permission to let them change as needed. Those type of things I think are going to be very important for all of us going forward, not just as individuals, but as business leaders, as people who are in an industry trying to accomplish goals and have expertise as we're growing in our own brands and our own professionalism. I think all of those things are going to be very valuable. So figure out what those words are for you that help you do that refueling. So when we look at how I think innovation and resiliency can play out in action, that's really what we're going to talk about today is what does this mean in practice? It's great to kind of theorize about the concepts and talk about all of it, but it's like, how do we actually put these into praxis inside of our organizations or businesses? So I think the first thing all of us felt last year was we have to go back to the core brand, to the brand essence, right? We have to go back to the values, the mission, the vision, the purpose, whatever it is that we've really designed in our business that is, like I said, sort of our core bedrock, right? I always say that when it comes to brand, the core foundation of what we're doing is the emotions that we want people to feel and that we want to feel, right? So we're trying to give people experiences. We're trying to leave them with something specific around what we do and why it matters. And so what are those core feelings that we really want to connect into? A lot of us had to go back there and dig in. And so to me, it came down to three really important practices, which was listening carefully, building relationships, and being real, right? And that we had to look at these things and make changes in the way that we were handling our businesses and organizations. And then we had to make sure those changes were reflected in our public facing image, right? So it became really important, I think, for every client and student that I had, that we sort of took a breath and we said, okay, we got to go back to the foundation. We got to go back to the center and we got to ask a few questions and we have to really think about who it is that's on our side, who's in our community, who can we work with. And then we have to get really comfortable with just telling the truth and being transparent, because now is not the time to try to convince people that what's going on is not a huge deal, right? To act as if everything is the same is not going to work because the rest of the people out there know it's not. So we're going to have to enter into a space, which especially in marketing is sometimes uncomfortable, but even in business overall, where we just get very real about the struggles, the challenges, the issues, the mistakes, right? Everybody started to have to just be very honest, even in the business world, because the customers themselves, the audiences that we're connecting with, they are not stupid. They know what's happening. They're having the same experience we are, and they need us to be relevant to that experience, right? They need us to show up in the world, even when we're selling products and services. They need us to show up in the world and interact with them in a way that says, hey, we recognize reality. We recognize what's happening around us, and we're going to be part of the conversation, right? And hopefully, again, if you are doing it right as a business, you are able to be part of the solutions, be part of the innovation, right? Be part of the resiliency. So I'm going to quote Google a lot today. And, this is because Google has access to the behaviors of billions of people across the planet. And one of the things that they do is really study human behavior when it comes to using the internet and using their particular tools as well, but using the internet overall. And we really sort of are gifted with this information that they were willing to share last year about how things were changing, how things were becoming different in the marketplaces. And I feel like they did a great job of just highlighting some key things that need to be integrated into our approaches when it comes to dealing with our customers. And so to me, that can mean marketing, sales, it can mean promotions, it can mean all these different things, right? But we really need to incorporate kind of this bigger understanding into things. So one of the studies that they did basically sort of asked the question, what do people need right now? What are the things that they are searching for that are really important to them? And what it comes down to is these three buckets, right? Self-care, social connection, and identity. And they have a lot of data around why they've identified these three things. right? But to me, I think one of the most valuable things was being able to look at these buckets, because when you start to see these sort of topical groups, you really do see where all these different issues that we've been talking about, questions we've been asking, all these different cultural, societal, global kind of things that have been happening, really the result is that people end up having a lot of things that fall into these three buckets, right? And I think we all universally felt this. Connecting with others became even more important. Taking care of ourselves became even more important. And our own personal identity, which is often attached to our core values, became a big part of our decisions. It became a big part of how we handle things. It became a big part of us making decisions about how to change our own behaviors in our own lives. So to me, again, this is something where as we evaluated brands, we went back in to some sort of deeper discussions, right? And one of my favorite quotes about this particular Google sort of topic was, thinking this way forces us to understand deeply and holistically how a product or service operates in people's lives. When we do, we open up to new ways to communicate, connect, and serve people. And so I think in going back to the brand center and using these three sort of components, right? The self-care, identity, and social connection, we were able to start putting together more messaging and more conversations around this sort of idea of how do we really serve people in their lives? How do our products and services operate for people? And what are the pros and cons, and what's working and not working, right? So in that evaluation, not only did we get to go back to our center, but we also got to ask some key questions that maybe we haven't asked in a long time, which is, what is the true impact of what we're doing? And this little sort of trio, self-care, identity, and social connection, you can see this in a lot of marketing that's gone on, even if they didn't use the Google model. This is something, like I said, Google has observed and then tried to quantify and contextualize for us. And so these three things, my favorite sort of examples come from a lot of sort of outdoor style brands. That's something that I'm personally into. And so I noticed a lot how they were incorporating these things. And I've given you some examples. You can click on these whenever you get the slide deck. But this is a great commercial from Subaru. And it was one of my favorites in their campaigns last year. And I feel like it literally sort of shows these three pieces in action, right? And so the commercial itself is really about two neighbors that live in a farm area, and she gets a puppy, and that puppy keeps running to visit the neighbor, right? And the first time she apologizes, and then the dog just keeps running to visit the neighbor. But the end of the commercial, the dog is older and she still has her Subaru, right? So they're still marketing the car. And it's about this friendship between the two neighbors, between the dog, and how the dog brings these two people together, right? So they really, it's funny, I love that they tap into this identity of dog lovers, of dog people. They generally, they actually went specifically into that sort of identity and really tapped in. So for those of us, I think, who consider ourselves dog people, it really, it's easy to relate to. It's, it has this beautiful sort of focus on cultivating relationships or friendships, and it has this focus on what it means to be a neighbor. And I think last year that was a relevant message, right? Another example that I think is great is the Opt Outside campaign from REI. And so, the Opt Outside campaign was developed originally because on Black Friday, REI decided they would not focus on selling. As a matter of fact, they would close their stores and they would not sell online, and they would ask people to go outside instead of indulging in consumerism. And it was a really powerful value statement from them a few years ago. I think it was a 2015 campaign. And that campaign has continued now for almost 6 years, right? Where they're using the opt outside kind of idea to really help people unify around the self-care of spending time in nature, around the identity of loving the outdoors, of being an outdoor enthusiast, And Opt Outside is this campaign where while you are choosing to be outdoors, you actually take a photo or take a video and you share it with people, right? And so that social connection is literally built into the experience where you get to see a bunch of other people that are taking the same option that you are. And so I want you to really think about this when it comes to the messaging, how you're presenting yourself on social media, how you're presenting yourself in your email marketing, how you're presenting yourself on your website, the verbiage that you're using, the stories that you're telling. Is there a way to think about self-care, identity, and social connection and bring those things into the conversation? Because they are three very important areas that almost every person has been impacted by on some level. And again, the context might be different. Different people are going to understand this in different ways. But I think it's just a great thing to consider. And in a lot of ways, I realize it's confusing. Sometimes I'm talking to people. So I'm working with a student right now who works for a trucking company. And so for her, when she's like, how do I bring self-care into the trucking company? And it's like, I understand there's some questions when you feel like, these type of ideas don't contextually align with what you do. But I really want you to let yourself be flexible and really think about it, because almost every industry, every product or service that you have, you could work these three things into it. They're very broad, right? And so there are ways that you can connect with your customers, regardless of the industry that you're in, and say to them, we care about who you are, which is the identity. We care about the community that you're in, which is their social connection. And we care that you feel good. That's self-care, right? That's actually the three things that you're really saying when you connect with people on this level. So to me, there really are opportunities in every industry. I think it's just some industries are more naturally emotional than others, right? And so, nonprofits, we have much more natural reach into the emotional realm because a lot of the work has that baseline. If I'm an accountant, if I'm doing sort of just, selling shoes, if I'm doing these other things that maybe I don't consider as emotionally compelling, sometimes we think there's no way to go deeper, but there's always a way to go deeper in your relationship with your customers. So the goal is really to build and nurture relationships. I think that's a huge part of innovating and resiliency. And again, I will say anecdotally as a business owner, this is how I've survived every major change in the world, in our culture, in our economy over the last 17 or 18 years. It's because relationships became a core piece of how I centered my business. And when things get difficult, I know that I am not alone in the process, right? And I know that there are other people I can go to get the support I need in order to refuel, in order to get myself into the space of innovation and resiliency. And so there's 5 things that Google took sort of a deeper dive on in looking at search behavior, really understanding what people are searching for, how that has shifted over the last 12 to 14 months. And then, like I said, trying to tap into these more emotional needs that people have, that if we can design our messaging around this type of thing, that we are going to see that we make a deeper connection to these people, a more personal connection. And so again, there's going to be different ways to interpret this. And I want to invite everybody, while we're having this conversation, if you have a question about one of these, or you want to talk about how it applies to your business and how you would maybe take this concept and sort of add it to the narrative or the story that you're telling, I want you to feel free, because we've got time today to do that, to feel free to unmute and just talk to me about it. But I think each one of these 5 things, I've been taking these and really looking at how we can integrate them, like I said, into our approach. And when we talk about, marketing, I'm talking about the whole approach in a lot of ways. I'm mostly focused on digital, but I think these things can work in all sorts of traditional media as well, because it's not really about the channel that you're using or the software that you're using. It's about the actual conversation that you're sparking. It's about the feelings that you're inspiring people. It's about the benefits and about the sort of reasons, the why behind why they would become a customer, right? Why they would buy your product over someone else's. why they would choose to hire you or work with your organization rather than another. And so if you can frame basically what is the pitch in a lot of your marketing materials to tap into these different things that we know are truly problems that people need to solve, or issues that they want to deal with, or questions they want to ask, when we can really join them in this sort of narrative that, like I said, is now kind of global, then we're able to really help people feel what I said earlier, which is that we're showing up for them, right? We're showing up for them in a way that they know is meant to be serving them, right? Because they can feel it. They feel that you're aligned with their needs. And that makes a big difference right now, right? So Google identified 5 things. First thing was creating control. A lot of people, because of having many things in their lives that are outside of their control, they are now gaining control back by doing smaller things, right? Their immediate environments, the way they take care of themselves, which has a lot to do with their emotional and mental responses to things. It's really important right now for people to see opportunities to still be able to create in their own lives, right? And still be able to have intention behind what's happening. So when you can take your products and services and angle them in this way, you're going to help people accomplish something that they really want to experience right now. Because I think going forward, we still have a time period where we're not all going to know exactly what's going to happen. All of our plans may not be exactly what we think, right? And so having that flexibility, we need to have smaller things in our lives that are allowed to be kind of ours, right? So the more that you can make people have that experience with your products and services, the more connected personally they're going to feel to it. Also, a lot of people have been reevaluating their balance, right? Their work-life balance, their family work balance. A lot of people have been asking questions of themselves about where they want to invest their time, invest their energy. And of course, not being able to see people you love for months at a time has also created a world where I think people are deciding, what are my priorities, right? What is it really that matters to me? So to me, this is where we really want to take our products and services and our brand and say, this is how we're going to step up to help you create more of this balanced experience, right? This is how we're going to help you level up yourself so that you have less stress, right? So that you can feel good more frequently. And I think, again, in every industry, we have the opportunity to talk about this, because most of us, regardless of the product or service we have, we are actually trying to contribute something positive to people's lives, right? Maybe it's to entertain them, maybe it's to educate them, maybe it's to help them accomplish a goal, maybe it's to help them solve a problem. But at the end of the day, we're trying to contribute something useful, right? And so we really want to talk about how our products and services are doing that, right? And if we can, we want to involve partners and our own customers into that conversation, right? To find out not just how we think that we can use our products and services to create this balance, but sometimes we learn from our customers new ways that these things can create balance, right? There's things that we haven't thought of yet. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to dig into this, but I think this is a really important listening exercise, right? To find out from people, how are they going to feel about things? Yeah, and I'm just looking at the chat. Thanks so much for answering or adding that in, Tara, that any questions, please feel free to jump in at any time. And I'm glad to talk about it. And again, we're going to look at some examples after we get through some of these core ideas. But I want to talk about the core ideas first. And so the third one is cultivating connection. This sort of goes along with our thinking on the social end. I think anytime that you can be building the community within your customers, really letting them know that you're part of the community, whether that community is really localized or super international, I think this is going to be a really strong piece. That sort of socialized connection is something that people really learn to value over the last year. And a lot of people started, like I said, also to really dig into what matters to them when it comes to socialization, right? I know it's funny, my business partner the other night said, he's still never met anyone as extroverted as me, right? And I laughed because I am a very, very strong extrovert. And, I was surprised that I made it through the last year as well as I did, because I thought it would be a lot harder. But the key thing is that for me, I never would have canceled my social life personally. I never would have opted for that. But having that handed to me, even though it was difficult, what it allowed me to do was really say, what kind of relationships am I cultivating? Not just who do I know? What am I cultivating? What am I putting my energy into? And I think as businesses, we need to ask this question, right? What are we really cultivating when it comes to the relationships that we have to our customers? And how are we talking to them about that cultivation? Because that is different, like I said, than just knowing everybody, right? I can just know everybody without cultivating a single connection. I can have millions of customers without cultivating a single deeper relationship, right? And so we really saw that shift into, let's put some work into it, right? That's what cultivation really is, right? It means that you didn't just accidentally have a relationship. It means that you intentionally put the work into building the relationship. And so I think when you can turn your conversation into something that's more about that, it's going to have a different effect on people. Also, anything that has to do with helping people curate a better experience at home, this is a big trend, and I don't think it's going to go away. Even though I think, obviously we're all going to be figuring out our way forward as we're able to interact with each other more publicly, I do think a lot of people saw the value of creating a home space that really works for them, that allows them to accomplish different goals inside their home space. And so anytime that your products and services can relate to that, that is an important kind of space to be in. And I think people even like their understanding of what their home means to them changed, right? Because whereas home might be somewhere that I ended up at the end of the day most times during the week, now it's where I'm spending my entire day. And I think that just shifted a massive perspective for people. And I think now going forward, people are thinking about how the place that they live needs to be a space that can adapt, right, to different issues, different problems, different things that happen in the world. We have to be able to sort of shift and change when we need to. And so that perception of home has really shifted. So if you're talking about that naturally, it's something to really, again, listen to your customers. How are they defining home? What's changed about the way that they view it? And if you've never talked about it before, these might be new opportunities to sell your products in a different way, to pitch your services in a different way, to explain to people how it impacts that sort of core home experience. And it's funny because to me, home has to do a lot with the heart, right? Home is often identified as the place where the things that you care about live. And so I think that's a really kind of important distinction to make, right? That we're talking about a really personal piece for people when we talk about their home space. And then, of course, a lot of the social justice issues that have been going on over the last year and have come, they were already big issues before, but they are now global, and especially here in the United States, national conversations that I think are happening at a different level. The fifth thing was acting on allyship has become a bigger conversation in business and what that means. And this is a deep conversation to have. And all the companies that I'm working with, we are doing monthly work on this issue to discuss what it means, to discuss how the brand is going to approach it, to talk to our individual teams and staff members about how they feel about it, to get everyone's opinions and to really look at how, again, we want to show up in the world, not just individually and more personally to our customers, but also to our communities and to the world at large. So this goes back to that conversation about impact. Every business is having an impact of some kind. If you're putting content into the world, you're having an impact, right? So I always use hashtag make the internet a better place, right? That I started using that just for myself because I really feel like if I'm going to spend this much time on digital media, I want to be making the internet a better place, not adding more trash to the mix, right? So that means that I have to be thoughtful about the content I'm creating. I think acting on allyship has become another level of that we need to really be bringing up to the forefront of our brands, right? And this is really related to core values, mission, vision, purpose, because those things are the foundation of how you act on allyship at the end of the day. So if you're clear on those things, then acting on this in your marketing, acting on it in the way that you're presenting yourself, acting on it as part of your image, it is going to get easier when that bedrock is solid, right? Because you know where you're willing to take a stand. So I want to take a minute. I know we've got a small group today. I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment. But I want to take a minute and when we're thinking about these things and just if anybody has feedback on kind of, is there something here that stands out to you? Is there something here where you feel immediately like, yes, my products or service can help people gain back their control or gain back their balance? Or, there is a relationship thing that I'm not tapping into yet. I'm just curious if any of that kind of stands out for people. Yeah, jump in, Leslie.
So I'm a life coach, and this is what I do all the time is try to bring the right value to the thing and show my impact and all that. So I love every class that you teach, and it always gives me new insight each time. So yeah, I'm working on my message. I'm trying to get better at my message and making sure that the impact is helping people instead of just being information. So yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, and I'll encourage you too. Sometimes you resonate with multiples of these things. And to me, it's like, well, then that gives us the chance to create different messages. Because if we're using social media and email and our website, we can actually take what I'm talking about and thread it through different pages, different campaigns, different platforms, right? We can make videos out of it. We can make graphics out of it. We can take photography that reflects it. We can write long form content that talks about it. All of those different things, as we sort of share that with the world, we're going to start to see where our audience really hooks in. Like that's where, to me, what we're talking about is giving me so many fresh content ideas. It's like after last year, I don't know about the rest of you, but I was feeling some like fatigue creatively. I was like, my brain hurts, my heart hurts. I'm supposed to get up every day and like come up with something smart and interesting to say to people over and over and over. And there was points last year where even the other marketing people that are in my classes, we were all just like, oh my God, I need the longest vacation right now. It's like, I'm just so tired of talking and I'm so tired of trying to come up with something new. And so I really appreciated Google just sort of compiling this massive amount of data around, especially people in our country, to kind of say, here's where we think you should go to sort of mine for some creative freshness. Because it really made a difference to me. It really allowed me, like I said, to get out of my own head for a minute and to try to just relate to the customers and relate to the audiences as a person.
Yeah, we
Not
don't
as a
really have any
marketer.
place to go because there's really no way to travel. So we're not really taking care of ourselves. That whole self-care thing, it has to come differently. It's not like, well, let me take a break or let me spend time at my house. Now it's like, get me the fuck out of my house, because you're like, I've been here so much and I love my house, but get me to a different space, so there's a lot of that that's going on. And you're right. And that creativity, I'm learning that, sitting at my desk and trying to be creative does not work. So I have to do something else like the dishes or gardening. I mean, I go out and weed and all of a sudden I have 15,000 thoughts and like, I'm not getting any weeding done because I keep going get in my journal and I'm like, oh yeah, let's write this idea down. Let's write this idea down. So I'm learning to do it in different ways. And I know this about myself, but yet it still takes me reminding myself that, hey, go do something else,
Yeah.
Go take a walk because you don't have that interaction with people as much. So it's more, you have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point because that's what you're saying, exactly, like getting out of your own head so that you can really, come up with something that's, like I said, in digital marketing, especially relevancy is our number one focus all the time. If we're not saying something that people consider relevant, then we're not going to get results, right? And so anybody else, you don't have to come on camera, but if you want to unmute, is there anyone else here who's just got things that, yes, this makes sense to you? Or if you have questions, about how this might apply to you, feel free to ask them. You can also chat in if that's easier. But I know sometimes typing up stuff can take a little longer. And I'll give you all a minute just in case you want to hop on. Then we will keep going. All right, great. And so again, just think about these. How can these be worked into your messaging? How can you work these things into the way you're presenting yourself? And if you're struggling, like I said, with digital content, you're trying to keep up with your website, your email, your Facebook, your Instagram, all the different things that you're supposed to be doing, and you want to really like infuse them with something that I think is going to bring like that innovative spirit, right? Use some of these as a baseline. Think about how you're presenting yourself and how can you include creating more control, giving people back their control, creating their balance, helping them really feel connected, right? Helping them feel like their home space where their heart lives is being really, you know, they're being given new ways, just as Leslie tapped into, to sort of explore themselves and take care of themselves. And then, like I said, there's so many different things that I think allyship can open us up to. And I want to encourage everyone, when you're talking about a lot of the social justice issues, environmental justice, we're talking about things related to COVID, keeping in mind, these are not simple things. So although I'm trying to talk about them in a simple way in 90 minutes, these are not necessarily, just like topics that we dive into. Like these are topics where we have to approach some empathy. We have to be thinking from other people's perspectives. We have to be willing to ask questions, say things, get corrected, and live with that. So I just want to encourage you in that process. That's part of being an ally in my mind, is not being afraid to listen to people that disagree, not being afraid to answer people out in the public that have a different perspective, right? And it's not about everybody saying exactly the same thing. That's not actually how we innovate, honestly, in my opinion. There's no innovation if we're all just saying the same thing and just buying into the same thing. Innovation comes from all of us questioning each other and questioning ourselves, right? In a way that's respectful, in a way that's very productive, right? And that's entirely possible. So Google also identified a few different behaviors that they feel are going to stick. They were like, basically, here's some things that happened during COVID that we think are going to continue going forward into the future based on the data. So more helpful, relevant shopping experiences. If you are selling products of any kind, customer service and marketing are the same thing. So to me, the shopping experience, you really want to be evaluating it, testing it. You want to make sure everything is smooth, fast, easy, trustworthy. Anybody running an e-commerce site, I think, really had to be ready to innovate and change and adapt and take their websites to another level this past year, because that's not going to go away. People are going to continue shopping online even as things open up. Because I feel people started to realize the convenience that is part of this, right? And how quickly and easy they can get access to things. Locally minded and collectively conscious consumers are going to continue. So we already know that a lot of the younger generations, especially, and baby boomers do it too, but at higher levels, Gen Xers, and then even higher levels, millennials and Gen Zers, when they spend money very intentionally with brands that they have a personal connection to, right? So they're really audiences that tap into the brand that you're presenting. Who is your business? Who do what do you care about? Who do you serve? Who's the owner? What values do you have? What kind of charities do you support? They really dig into a lot of all that. That intensified last year. And we think that intensification of giving money to our own communities and giving money to the things that are really core to our identity, the things that matter most to us, that's going to be a continued thing going forward. And we already knew that, but it's accelerated. And that sort of leads to the values-driven spending decisions. So that the desire to know that much about brands leads us into spending money with our values, rather than just things like what's the cheapest, what's the fastest, what does everybody think is the most popular, right? We're also looking at, does spending the money make us feel good? Do we feel like spending that money contributed to the world in a positive way? And then empathetic, creative-led buy at-home experiences are going to continue. And this last trend, I just wanted to elaborate on, because I feel like, that empathetic, creative-led buy at-home experiences, a little bit nebulous. What does that exactly mean? But what we're really talking about is that marketing people and business owners, like I said, as we started to deal with the same thing that all of our customers were dealing with, we entered this new dimension where the space between personal and professional really, it just disappeared. right? All of our lives kind of blended, our personal and professional lives blended together. What that created from a business perspective and a marketing perspective is those of us that are entrepreneurs and that are doing the communications and the sales and the advertising, we started to feel a lot more appreciation and a lot more connection to what what our customers think, need, and feel, because we're literally experiencing the same thing that we did. Um, so together, that created this just higher level of empathy. And we've seen this culturally. The word empathy in our culture has literally become a much bigger conversation in the last, 12 to 14 months. And even in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years, that word has become something that we're talking about a lot more. And so, what's happening is marketing people, business people, as we're designing products and services and experiences, we're starting to think more about the complexity of the humans that we're connected to. And this is really an opportunity to have more creative inspiration that unlocks really amazing, powerful new ideas, right? And this is where our relationships with the people we serve are becoming less transactional, and they are truly becoming more of an exchange. They are becoming more of a back and forth, which is what relationships are meant to be, right? So this is a new way of thinking in business. Oftentimes, and I've talked about this for many years actually, but we often say, like, there's no business and pleasure. There's no mixing the personal and professional. We're going to keep these things separate. But the truth is that gap between those things has broken down. Right. And so a lot of what's happened is now given us a period where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of questions. And at the same time, in order to deal with that, we've seen digital adoption, the use of digital tools for communication, for marketing, for buying. All of that has ramped up much more quickly than it was before. And we were already moving at a fast pace. So digitally speaking, especially, we were already moving that technology so quickly. It is now tripled, quadrupled of the pace of innovation, adaptation, change. Even social media is a great example. Last year, so many things were released on different social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. They started elevating their products really, really quickly, adding new features, getting rid of certain features, right? So there was a major digital transformation that individual people experienced as consumers, but that then was passed along to the people who are running the businesses, who are doing the marketing. And what that did was, like I said, create opportunity. So the businesses that were able, I think, to take innovation and resiliency and utilize that energy, they were able to find new ways to grow and new ways to recover. So again, continuing to move in this direction of how do these things actually play out, right? How do we actually put them into practice, right? Rather than just talk about them. So there's a few things that I think can happen. When it comes to listening carefully, I think right now is a great time before we get into a part of the year where things are going to be moving fast and there's going to be a lot of things happening. Now is a great time, especially between now and, I say, mid-May. And this is just my prediction as an entrepreneur, but I feel like right now, with everything that's going on in our country, the energy of people, and Leslie touched on this, the energy of people to me feels like a champagne bottle about to pop off, right? So people have had a lot of energy building up inside them, and they've been managing it, dealing with it, and, moving through it as best they can. But the truth is, as soon as they're able to have more freedom, that champagne bottle is going to pop and the energy is going to spew out. So I work a lot in tourism marketing, and I've been warning people, I think by mid-May, we're going to see a bunch of people just doing exactly what Leslie said, right? They may have the opportunity to take a break, and they're going to take it. I think we're still going to see some trends where people stay more locally, they do more driving. A lot of people, I think, are going to spend time with their family because they had the first chance to do that in a long time. But I think that energy of just, I've been holding on to this and wanting it, and now it's finally sort of within my grasp. I think before we get to that sort of pop off of energy, we really want to have some intentional feedback loops in place. And we want to make sure that we're prepared to really pay attention and respond and actually listen while that energy is moving. Don't get caught up in the energy so you stop listening, because I feel like that's the tendency. Sometimes we get busy and we just start focusing on production. We focus on marketing and talking at people rather than that receiving end where we pay attention to what they're saying. So if you're getting reviews on Google, Facebook, Yelp, TripAdvisor, any of these things, read your reviews, answer them, good or bad. What are people saying? Make this task somebody's task. If it can't be yours, ask somebody to do it. If you can't do it every week, fine, do it once a month, right? But really, truly, this is one of your easiest ins to knowing what's going on with people that are interacting with you, right? You can also request things from people. So if you're more like me and you work in a more service-based area, I don't get as many reviews and things online. I'm B2B, I'm not B2C. So I don't have that bulk of responses. But what I can do is just reach out to the people I know are at my core and say, hey, you've worked with me for a long time. You've known me for a long time. You've been to a lot of my classes. Can you give me some feedback? And send them a little survey. Ask them to join you for a quick, Q&A for 30 minutes. I have a person named Jenna who works with me. She's sort of like the other person at the school, the JV Media Institute, where we do almost all the work, just the two of us. Many times she has talked to the students to sort of do a brief exit interview with them, get feedback from them. You can even do simple things like polls on social media, right? I can do polls in Instagram stories. I can do polls on Facebook. I can do polls on TikTok. I can do a lot of different things where I engage people and ask their opinion on something. Just keep in mind, you want it to be easy. So ask them multiple choice questions. Ask them something they can just tap and answer. Don't make them tap with their thumbs and write out a bunch of stuff, right? You can really easily get feedback when you make it a very simple buy-in, right? Where it can take them 5 minutes or less. And you'd be amazed at the kind of information you can get. Last year, for one of the nonprofits that I work with, we really wanted to understand because their board was going through a big transition, what we could do to really help people and transition the board in a way that was successful. So I sent out something to all of our board members, which there was about 20 of them. It was called the State of Our Hearts and Minds Survey. And I basically asked them to rate their levels of stress and to really pick from certain things and tell us what's been making you feel good and what's been making you feel bad, right? And it was really beautiful because the whole entire survey took probably about 6 minutes to complete. And we were able to get a lot of information from people. And when we released a bunch of people from the board that needed to bow out, we were very quickly able to replace those people and keep the organization moving forward. And a lot of that was definitely because we took the time to really pay attention to what was going on with the people that we are connected to and really say to them, we want to know, like, what are you afraid of, right? What's bringing you joy? What's causing you stress? It was literally simple questions like that where I would give them multiple things to choose from, and they could choose 2 of them or 3 of them or all of them, right? So we could really know, like, okay, this person is saying that they are just really overwhelmed. We need to give that person an out, for their health. We need to really show up for them and say, we're not going to force you to stick to your 2-year board commitment if you can't do it, because there was a lot of factors that came into play for people. And then create a structured system for requesting and receiving feedback. So there's lots of different ways that this plays out. But in my mind, there's so many instances where we're interfacing with our customers and we have the chance to say, what did you experience? How'd it go? What's happening? Whether that's digitally, whether that's standing in front of them, right? So we want to make sure that that becomes like a structured system where, if you have a storefront, if you have an attraction, if you have, a spa, a salon, somewhere where people are still physically having to show up, how can we create that system where we get their feedback in the moment and that we're okay with it, whether it's perfect, right? We have to be willing to listen to things that say we're not perfect. It's very important because we're going to be able to do better and learn from it, innovate, right, from that information. And then we're going to be able to build a longer lasting relationship with those people. So it's not about always getting 5 stars, right? It's really about being willing to hear when you didn't and being okay with it and then actually learning from it. But if you're never paying attention to this whole process, what happens is you don't have the time for it. It gets into the background. I do think there's a lot of ways too that you can incentivize feedback. So, again, depending on what type of industry you're in and how likely it is that people will give you that information, if you need to, somehow figure out a way to make it worthwhile, right, for people to connect, or give them something in return for their feedback that allows them to have more self-care, right? You can use some of the things that we just talked about to incentivize them. The only thing, like I said, that we don't want to incentivize, which you see in the slide, don't incentivize people to write reviews. That's a off. So you just want to be careful with that, because if Google or Yelp or some other place suspects you're doing that, creates a little bit of an issue. Also, whatever tracking and reporting you have, I really want to suggest you look at the first quarter of 2021 and you really take a look at what's happening. So use your social media insights, use your Google Analytics on your website, use the stats from your email newsletter. If you have a CRM, look at the interactivity that you're tracking in your CRM, but really take some time before we get into a busier sort of, like I said, that champagne energy where everybody lets out their energy. It's like, let's be prepared to say, okay, what's been going on the first 3.5 months of the year? What can we learn from it? How can we start to set some goals and attach some goals to the objectives that we have as a business or organization? Then how can we take those objectives and really say, these are the trackable data pieces that are going to show us whether or not we're achieving these objectives and whether or not we're reaching our goals. So the value of tracking and reporting, I know we all know this, but now is the time to do it. If you want to reinvent what you've been doing, like I said, listening is the key. And data is actually just listening. That's all it is. It's paying attention to what people do. It's paying attention to what is getting the most response from them. It's paying attention to what topics or issues they seem to care about the most. Right? If we can learn that now as we're going forward, we're going to be able to capitalize on all this energy that people are going to be giving to us once, like I said, we're in May, June, July. I think we're going to see people want to go and spend some money. They want to do some special things. They want to travel. They want to invest, right? They're getting to a point where they need to sort of release some of the things they've been holding in. And so we want to be able to really utilize that energy, not just kind of let it hit us randomly or sometimes let it miss us entirely, right? So if we're listening to the data, then a lot of times we're going to be more prepared. We're going to make changes to our website. We're going to put content plans together for email, for our blogs, for our social media, and we're going to end up really creating strong connections. And don't be afraid when it comes to tracking and reporting to take what you learn from that information and then experiment a little. So like I said to Leslie, put together some different types of content with different messaging and then put it all out. And in the end of the month, take a look at what got the biggest response, right? Take a look at what got the most engagement and pay attention to it, because that's telling you, it's giving you direction on where your audience wants to go. So even though, yes, marketing always requires consistency, we also want to have some room to experiment and pay attention to where people are at, because things have changed. Also, with building relationships, how do we put this into practice? So my business partner and I were talking a few weeks ago, and I think he said something really powerful about, from a sales perspective, really looking at your past customers, your past clients, if you're a nonprofit, your past donors, and making sure that sort of connection that you have to people that have already paid you, that have already worked with you, that have already hired with you, how can you reconnect with them? How can you let them know that you are thinking about them? How can you remind them that basically, even if they haven't called you in a long time, that you're there, that you're present, that you have something you're contributing to the world? So how can you make that connection? Again, whether it's digitally or in person, what can you do? Can you offer them something? Can you invite them to something? How can you sort of bring them back into the fold and just remind them that you're here? And if things have changed in the way that you can serve them, how can you tell them about those changes? And then alongside of that comes, how can you think about the previous leads or the previous opportunities that maybe you had in 2019, 2018, where things never came to fruition, right? So my business partner and I really started to go back and look at, who are those people that came to us with projects before COVID that it wasn't the right time and it didn't work out, right? But things have shifted, right? We always have that sort of mixture, right? There's always, in sales especially, there's cold, warm, hot leads, right? A lot of us are like, we want the hot leads because those people are ready. They're ready for what we have to offer. And the cold leads we want to identify quickly because we don't want to spend as much time on them, because it might be that they're not a good fit, right? Especially in the B2B world. It's like, if you're pretty cold when I'm talking to you, it's like, all right, maybe this isn't relevant. But the warm leads are this middle ground where sometimes there is potential, but the timing's not right. And so Justin and I have gone back and really reached out to people where the timing wasn't right in mid 2019, early 2019, or even the end of 2018. But the truth is, our core values were aligned. So we're going back there to say, hey, we weren't able to do that thing in 2019, but what are you doing in 2021? What's happening? What's different? Let's have lunch and talk about it, because we know that we have shared core values. We know that we share the same audiences. We know that we respect what you do and you respect what we do. So maybe there's a fresh opportunity that we don't know about yet. And that has brought some really beautiful opportunity to us to revisit some things that we had thought were maybe not going to happen. Because again, those warm leads were people that were a good fit on one level, but like I said, the timing wasn't right on another. So think about those opportunities and bring them back around, because starting from that level where you already values align, where you already have similar audiences, where you already have that mutual respect, starting there means you can accomplish something a lot faster than starting from scratch with a brand new partner with a brand new connection, right? Because you've already got the relationship happening. And then, of course, lead with empathy. This is something that I'm literally practicing all the time. As a matter of fact, last year I spent a lot more time teaching emotional intelligence as part of marketing. And I use emotional intelligence, the basic practice as a marketer, because if I'm not emotionally intelligent, let me tell you, marketing will burn the soul out of you. I love marketing communications because I love people. I've also been working in the field for a long time. And I will tell you, if you're not careful, marketing will literally just suck the life out of who you are. It is a process in which you are exposing yourself to a huge amount of people all the time, endlessly. And your job basically is to figure out how they feel and try to create things that satisfy what they feel. And so over and over, you're in this very sort of deep reciprocal relationship with a lot of other human beings. And it is easy to kind of lose yourself in that process. So one of the ways that I think you don't lose yourself is by really fortifying your emotional intelligence, knowing the difference between your own emotions and other people's emotions, right? Really knowing how to not take things personally until they truly are. There is a point where things are personal, but a lot of times what we interpret as personal is not personal. And so we really have to be, as marketers, especially in our actual industry and field, we have to have high levels of emotional intelligence. Otherwise, working on social media every day will make you very sad, right? It's not the easiest job in the world to expose yourself to. So having emotional intelligence, empathy becomes a natural practice of that. And it really allows you to understand how you operate, how much you can step into other people's shoes, and knowing when you can step out, right, is really valuable. But that's really about having a healthy relationship. That's not even a business thing. That's like a human thing that we could all be doing. And so to me, that really is what allows us to make people our top priority, and then really to become comfortable with stating our intentions and purpose, being direct and upfront about what we offer, and remembering that a transaction is a relationship, right? A lot of times we're so focused on the money, we're so focused on the transaction, but that is a give and take process. It's a process that deserves to be respected and deserves to be honored in a lot of ways, even though it's an exchange of money. And I was really lucky. I had a business coach for a while who really helped me get in right relationship with money as a business owner. And one of the most important things that she really helped me integrate into my business practices is that money is just energy, and it is an energy exchange, and products are just energy, and it's an energy exchange. And when you start to understand that everything that you're doing in the three-dimensional world as a business owner is also this energetic piece that people experience, I think you just get a lot better at doing what you're doing. regardless of what it is, right? Because you're really starting to see people as people. And so with relationships, not only with your customers, do I think that needs to develop in a big way. And like I said, now is a great time to get really clear with the relationships you're building so that you understand them. I think this also moves us into something called partnership marketing and promotions. And partnership marketing and promotions is a big umbrella. It can include everything from nonprofit, for-profit collaborations to influencer marketing. It's really, I think, a huge powerhouse for those of us that are small businesses, because when we work together, we can accomplish a lot more than when we're trying to do it all alone. And my business partner and I, when we started JV Media Institute, I had been helping him for a few years before that to start his agency, the JV Media Group. And when I began helping him with his agency in 2011, we were competitors. And he came to me and said, hey, I'm going to expand my agency. It's going to be in direct competition to you. But what I'd really like is for you to help me. And I also know that you're a really good teacher because I've been taking your classes. What I'd like to do is have you help me build an agency. And then I want us to build a school. And so I see that this would be like a win-win for both of us, right? And I had just gotten out of a business partnership. I'd been on my own for about 18 months. And that business partnership ended very difficultly in 2009 after the economic downturn. And it was, just due to stress. And, I had a little trepidation about collaborating with someone else. But the truth was I could really see that Justin and I shared a lot of the same values, that even though we were very different people, that we treated people the same. We understood how important relationships were. And I entered into what I consider to be one of the greatest business decisions of my life, which in essence became partnership marketing, where I joined forces with my own competitor and I have succeeded at a much higher level because of that decision. And so this is another thing I think where we have to buck the old business traditions of, keep everything to yourself. People are trying to steal all your ideas. I'm not saying there's none of that exists in the world, but I do think there's a lot more, especially in the small business world, where we want to work together to help each other, to elevate each other literally. So this is a digital marketing strategy that Justin and I teach. This is not a conceptual thing. There is a literal strategy that can go into this. So there's a few questions you can ask yourself, right? So what brands, organizations, influencers, thought leaders, if there's other people in your industry, in your community, in the conversation online that share your audiences, they're connecting to the same groups of people that you want to connect to. Who are these people? What are these brands? Because there may be opportunities here to work together with them to really expand your reach and to expand your engagement. And then what channels do you share? So once you're looking at these different potential partners and influencers, where are they present and you're present? Is it Twitter? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Do you both have email newsletters? Do you both have killer websites, right? Where is your community existing online? Because you're going to want to, you might have a larger list of partners, but the way you prioritize is to find the ones that are already present in the spaces that you are, right? Because that's going to be a more natural flow of energy. It's not going to take as long to come up with a partnership idea if you're already working on the same platforms together, or you already have some of the same tools. And then make sure, like any other relationship, you're not just showing up and saying, here's what I want you to do for me, right? A lot of times in business, I don't know why we think that's the greatest way to approach it. I'm all for directness, but I think when we're talking about partnership, we really want to show up with what we're going to contribute, right? Like, here's what I can contribute. Here's the talent I can leverage. Here's what I think you could contribute. So come with the idea prepared, right? Show them that it's a win-win. And a lot of times you'll find, especially again, in the small to medium-sized business world, we know it's a win-win. Right? You don't have to convince us. If we're already on social media, if we're already doing email, if we're already connected into these channels, then we know working with other people can help us. So at the end of the day, what this comes down to is you saying you're awesome is important. You telling the world that what you do matters is very, very valuable, and you need to be doing that regularly. But in marketing, we all know what works better is for someone else to say you're awesome, for someone else to say what you do matters, for someone else to talk about the benefits and the value of what you do. And a lot of times when we're talking about marketing, we talk about opening new markets, right? People are like, I want more customers. I want more customers because more customers means more money. That's completely true. And obviously, if we're all in business, we want both of those things, right? That's 100% true. At the same time, though, going customer by customer is a lot. In a small business, especially when you're a one-person show or a three-person show, or even a 5 to 10-person show, that's a lot of people end up in situations where they have multiple job descriptions, right? They're not just doing one job, they're doing like 1.5 to 3 jobs. If you're the sole proprietor, you're doing all the things, you're wearing all the hats. So to me, what matters is how do we get more quickly in front of people and build the relationship? And the way that we do that is having somebody they already trust say that we can be trusted. So we bypass this huge time frame in the digital world when we actually partner together with other people who will take a stand for us. And we can help them in the reverse by doing the same, right? And so really thinking about that, who are the partners that you have going forward this year? I always say in my marketing for my school, don't go it alone. Now is not the time to go it alone. I'm just going to make that clear statement. As we go into the rest of 2021, 2022, 2023, I really want to encourage you as a small to medium-sized business, now is not the time to do it alone. Even the corporations understand this. It really makes sense to work together with other organizations, other people, other brands that share your vision and mission and values. And if you can do that, what happens is you end up building these relationships much more quickly, right? It's like the same thing as being introduced by a friend to another friend, right? That's a lot easier than just meeting a stranger on the street and trying to make friends with them. And then the last part is really being real. And I'm sure most of you have already dug into the idea that authenticity matters from a business perspective, that in marketing it matters. But I think in the age of COVID and everything that's happened last year, in the age of these really powerful discussions around, everything from racial justice to environmental justice, all of these different things have required us in the business world to get much more real with ourselves and to get more real with our customers, because our customers demand it. They don't want fake BS anymore from marketing. They want things that are valuable, things that mean something, things that impact them in a positive way. So this is where we can really put into practice some things. And I think this is really a little bit more about mindset, but it turns into the content that you're sharing with the world, right? So I really want to acknowledge that people, especially in the US, we want a 360-degree view of the brands and what they offer. We don't want some one-dimensional, commercialized image. We want to have the full view of what's happening, right? We've all lived through enough stories where a brand image turns out to be completely false because the practices of what they do behind the scenes are completely out of alignment with the gimmicks and the messages that they're forcing down people's throats. So the internet and our awareness in the world has really amped up over the years. And so to me, this is something we really want to embrace, right? We want to be open to telling the whole story about our businesses. We want to be 100% transparent and truthful. We want to get away from gimmicks and trying to convince people of things and manipulating them. The consumers are just smarter than this at this point, right? So we want to dig into how authenticity matters. We want to get comfortable with this from a messaging standpoint. During COVID, I worked with a lot of people to really get clear with what we were going to say. Sometimes we paused our social media for 2 weeks, right? And we literally took a break because we needed to regroup and really be thoughtful about what we were going to do. And so a lot of that has to do with, like I said, the cultural values that you're building. And even if you're a sole proprietor, there's cultural values that you are building in your business, even if it's just you. And so to me, we really just want to think about how we can take a stand, how the things that we say in marketing and representation of our business are followed up by actions, right? We are not just all talk, we are doers in the world. And then sometimes we know when to be quiet and really take stock of avoiding defensive responses, right? As brands, not defending ourselves, listening. That's a choice that we make, right? It's a choice we make every day. And in the small business world, I'm sure we've all seen examples of small business owners that chose defensiveness publicly. And that can turn into a whole scene. And last year we had a lot of those scenes, right? Because people had a lot of feelings. And so when there were mistakes made or things said that were insensitive or just things that didn't work right, you had customers responding with really strong opinions about it and lots of criticism, sometimes anger, right? But at the end of the day, as brands, if we really want to be professional, what we're going to do is take a breath and realize we don't need to defend ourselves. We need to listen for a minute because obviously something's wrong. There's been a misunderstanding. There was a bad experience. Something happened. And again, when I talk about this, I'm not talking about crazy trolls. I'm not talking about people that are super unproductive, just like all caps writing hate speech. We just block those people. Those people, you can't negotiate with those folks, right? That's why we call certain groups of people on the internet trolls. They're out of control. Those people, you just block them out of your scene because there's no way to have a productive conversation. But when people actually come to you with like true criticism or a true bad experience or things that are difficult or things that they disagree with or something that you said that they feel like was tone deaf or whatever it is that they want to criticize, really the ultimate thing that you can do is just be real and own it. That's it. And I think businesses have to be more comfortable with owning their mistakes at the end of the day. Because when you do that, truly, even though it seems counterintuitive, because it feels like, well, if I admit I made a mistake, if I own up to being insensitive, saying something wrong, doing something wrong, then I'm going to lose people. The truth is, you might actually gain people, right? You might actually get more buying power, more cash flow, more loyalty from people when you're honest. When you don't try to act like your business is perfect, because businesses are run by people and people are imperfect. I mean, this is basic humanity here, and everybody knows that. So trying to always look good is, I think, something in marketing that we've always focused on, but it really got beaten down last year. It's not possible to look good all the time, right? We really want to figure out ways to share our values, be honest, be upfront. And that's how we're actually going to get more actual customers. And I just find it interesting. We have to reframe this big time in our minds because we're like, oh, if I fail, I'm going to lose customers. If I say the wrong thing, I'm going to lose customers. If I admit we screwed up, I'm going to lose customers. I'm like, no, you might keep them. You might actually keep them. If you do nothing, say nothing, if you pretend it didn't happen, if you try to ignore it, then you're definitely going to lose them, right? So that realness is a strength. So again, we've got about 8 or 9 minutes left. If there's any questions about social media, about digital marketing in general, please let me know. The last thing I'm just going to share with you is I put together kind of some slides of examples of local businesses that I think are really taking what I'm talking about and putting it into practice. Again, because I want you to see how this plays out in the real world, how these are concepts and ideas and feelings and all these different things that I'm talking about, behaviors, but they're also actionable items in your business that you can put into practice. So the first few examples I want to use are restaurants here in town. And like I said, these I've been like collecting over the last year, just because I loved watching our community, for lack of a better way of putting it, just kick ass in a difficult time. It, as an entrepreneur and as somebody who's lived in Nashville for 21 years, it warmed my heart and got me up in the morning sometimes to watch other businesses in our community just innovate and be resilient and take the opportunities that they had to show up for the community. Because there were days, like I said, where I was feeling really kind of like tapped out creatively. And what made me feel better was to pay attention to some of this stuff and to really document it so that I could talk about it later. So I think some great examples of restaurants locally: Sunny Point Cafe, Bouchon, Asheville, and Vinny's Neighborhood Italian Restaurant. Sunny Point, I'm sure if you've driven through West Asheville, you've seen how they really modified their whole outdoor area. They are still people down the street sometimes when I'm over there waiting in long lines, 6 feet apart. but they really immediately set a tone. They created their outdoor space. They put up lots of, you can see that cute little signage there, where they really kind of established, hey, we want to still have people. We want to keep the business alive, but we really need you to, adhere to the rules so that we can all have a great time. They shared a lot of this process through social media. If you've driven by their building, you know their windows have huge value statements on the windows about the political, economic, social justice issues that they care about. And I thought that was really bold. And they still have people lining up out the door, right? Bouchon Asheville made a huge upgrade to their space to put in medical grade air purifiers. They told the whole story on social media while it was happening. It was also a very huge financial expenditure, and they shared that publicly, right? This is what we're doing. It is a big, huge effort. Financially, it's going to cost us a lot of money, but it is because we really want to keep everybody safe and healthy, and we want to stay open. And then Vinny's Neighborhood Italian over on Merriman Avenue, they also did a great job of coming up with some awesome promotions. They created outdoor seating. You can see here, this is an example of a promotion they did at the end of the year for New Year's, creating these sort of golden ticket style promotion. And essentially one of the things I loved about Vinny's Italian is that they created this really personal email newsletter that went out to all of their customers. And I'm part of their email newsletter, and I was just really impressed. I felt like sometimes it was so heartfelt, and it was, the owner sometimes speaking, but also really the staff kind of speaking, and then really saying, we need your help. We need your help to support our staff. We need your help to stay alive in this experience. And people really showed up for them. I think Lazoom Bus Tours was another example of a local company where people really showed up for them to support them when they had to shut down. Another great success story, and I got to the pleasure of hearing Sarah Wells Rowland speak about this, but another really amazing success story in the arts sector was the Village Potters Collective Vessels of Hope campaign. And when Sarah Wells Rowland talked about this, it was super moving because, they really lost all of their access to generating revenue with the shutdowns. And it was really stressful and worrisome for their whole collective. But what they did was they created Vessels of Hope, and potters created over 500 pieces, and their audience committed to buying them all, right? So they did this entire campaign and fundraised enough money to really push through their entire, physical location being shut down. And they were doing a chapter 2, they were continuing to roll it out, and they really used this on social media to build that social connection, that community for everyone. And it was really powerful. And like I said, the success was unprecedented, right? And it's because so many people who love what the Village Potters Collective does really wanted to show up for them and help them make it through such a hard time. I also went out to Tryon last year, and the Tryon Theater was obviously closed. But one of the things they were doing on Friday and Saturday nights was a lot of their downtown area was opening up on the street. Community members were able to walk around and interact with the businesses in an outdoor setting. And on Friday and Saturday from 6 to 7, the owners of the theater would come out and sell popcorn. And they would get to see everybody that would usually come to the theater. They would get to, recommend movies. They were doing some online stuff, some online screenings. They also pulled together a partnership with the Tryon Film Festival. And instead of the film festival happening in person, they did it virtually. And even though that was a very big change for them out there, when I met with the Tryon Film Festival, they were sharing with me that they got international people to both speak and attend their film festival for the first time. And it was because it was virtual rather than in person. So they actually expanded their reach, expanded their network, expanded their connection to people all around the world through film. And they did it in a much bigger way because of what happened. So to me, again, that's a perfect example of innovating in the moment and taking an opportunity that made a big difference for them. And it's going to make a big difference for them in the long haul. Also, Lisa Zahia who used to own a studio here, a dance studio. She created a completely online business that now is really a lifestyle brand in a community. She's done amazing things as she made a transition through last year to going completely virtual and getting rid of her in-person studio. So I think she's just another great example of adapting and innovating. And of course, you may have seen Air started foodinasheville.com. This made a big difference for people as well because it was a great new website where you could go and access information about what was open. And the Asheville Art Museum as well created a whole series of programs to engage people. They focused a lot on families and children, and they really figured out how to make that at-home experience something special with the museum. So I know we are at the top or the middle of the hour, so we're wrapping up at 11:30. If there's any questions, I just invite you to go ahead and unmute or chat in. I'm glad to stay for a couple of extra minutes if people have things they want to ask. But I want to just invite you all to take action, right? So ask yourself some questions, do some digging. Between now and the end of May, I think we all have a little bit of time before the energy really ramps up and people start doing more activities, going more places. So ask yourself these questions before we get into that busy time. And one thing that I want you to think about is going into the rest of the year, what are some of the craziest, weirdest, most out of the box ideas that you can have? One of the things that having a period of innovation and resiliency can give you is the chance to really chase your dreams in a way that you maybe have not allowed yourself to chase them before, to try things that you haven't tried in the past, to do something new or launch something new that you've been kind of thinking about for a long time, but it hasn't been ready. Now's a great time to dig into those weird, crazy, completely left field ideas and think about them as an opportunity. Because if you can do that, you're going to be able to embrace all the things that are changing and all the things that are developing and emerging now. You're going to be able to capitalize on those. You're going to be able to be a part of that change, to be a part of those opportunities. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate you spending your Friday morning with me. It means a lot. I will share this slide deck with Western Women's Business Center, who I so appreciate for asking me to do this. You can dig into a lot of this information, and you can also find out more information about how to connect with me. And always consider me a resource. If I can ever help you with anything, don't hesitate to reach out on social media or through our website, jbmediainstitute.com. But at the end of the day, this is about all of us coming together. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This was excellent and just so important to have these conversations about where we've been and where we're going and how to plan. And I just really, really appreciate your expertise today. I did put the Western Women's Business Center website in the chat, so please reach out for one-on-one coaching or to sign up for future workshops, including the one Sarah's doing next Friday on working from home strategies. And yeah, thank you so much.
Have a great day, everyone.